There's a certain kind of fear that doesn't scream. It whispers. Quietly. Constantly. Like a soft tap on the shoulder saying, "Did you say that wrong? Did they misunderstand you? Should you explain it again, just to be safe?" People who overexplain don't do it because they love the sound of their own voice. They do it because silence feels dangerous. Because ambiguity feels like a threat. Because somewhere in their past, someone taught them that being misunderstood is the first step toward being unloved. And what's fascinating is, overexplaining doesn't start as a behavior. It starts as a survival strategy. See, people who overexplain are rarely careless. They're the ones who double-check their words, triple-check their expressions, and rehearse conversations before having them. Not because they want control, but because they're terrified of the consequences of being misunderstood. Psychologists call this reassurance-seeking behavior. But emotionally, it's much simpler. It's the fear of hurting someone. The fear of disappointing someone. The fear of being blamed for something you never meant. This fear doesn't grow overnight. It grows from childhood moments you would never think to blame. Maybe they had parents who got angry easily. Parents who interpreted silence as disrespect. Parents who twisted innocent words into punishable offenses. So they learned to cushion every sentence with, "I mean, what I'm trying to say is, if that makes sense." Because precision became protection. Or maybe they grew up in a home where emotions were unpredictable. Where one wrong phrase could flip the mood of the room. So they learned to overexplain not as communication, but as self-defense. And then there are the ones who overexplain because they spent their whole lives being misunderstood. People saw their intentions through the wrong lens. People assumed the worst about them. People blamed them for things they never meant. So they learned to explain things down to the last molecule. Thinking clarity would finally protect them. But here's the deepest part. Overexplaining isn't actually about explanation. It's about permission. It's the mind asking, "Is it okay for me to exist as I am? Is it okay for me to take up space? Is it okay if I'm not perfect?" That's the part people don't see. On the outside, it looks like rambling. But on the inside, it's someone quietly pleading. "Please don't get upset. Please don't misread me. Please don't walk away." Because people who overexplain often carry a history of losing people without ever understanding why. One day someone left. One day someone withdrew. One day someone stopped caring. And their brain learned the wrong lesson. If I can be clearer, if I can explain myself better, if I can leave no room for doubt, maybe I won't be abandoned again. That's the tragedy of it. Overexplaining isn't about communication. It's about preventing loss. Here's something even more interesting. When a person grows up in an environment where their feelings are invalidated, their nervous system becomes hypervigilant. Always scanning. Always anticipating. Always preparing for impact. So before you even finish your sentence, their brain is already imagining 10 different ways you might misinterpret it. And 10 different clarifications to soften the blow. This isn't intelligence. This is trauma wearing intelligence as armor. People who overexplain have learned to narrate their intentions in real time because the world has punished them for being silent. They've learned to pre-defend themselves against offenses they never committed. And when they get into relationships, friendships, family, romantic, the pattern continues. They apologize too quickly. They blame themselves for things outside their control. They overjustify simple emotions like, "I'm tired. I need space. I don't agree." Because somewhere along the line, those harmless feelings became dangerous. Imagine never being allowed to feel without explaining why. Imagine never being allowed to express without proving it first. Imagine never being allowed to say no without giving a 10-sentence thesis about it. That's the life of someone who overexplains. And the saddest part is, they don't even notice they're doing it. They only notice when someone looks bored, or irritated, or confused. And suddenly the fear kicks in. Did I say too much? Did I mess it up again? But here's the thing most people never realize. Overexplaining is rooted in the belief that your natural self is a burden. It's the subconscious whisper that says, if I'm not perfectly clear, I'll be misunderstood. If I'm misunderstood, I'll be judged. If I'm judged, I'll be rejected. People who overexplain carry a heartbreak no one sees. They've never felt safe being imperfect. And that's why they speak the way they do. Circling around their point. Softening their tone. Adding disclaimers. Clarifying their clarifications. Because they're trying to offer you a version of themselves that won't scare you away. Let's talk about relationships. Because people who overexplain often become the emotional caretakers. They predict everyone's moods. They anticipate conflict before it happens. They absorb blame that doesn't belong to them. And because they're so used to overexplaining, they end up apologizing for their existence. If someone is upset, they think, it must be my fault. If someone is quiet, I must have said something wrong. If someone pulls away, I should have explained myself better. This constant self-monitoring is exhausting. Emotionally, mentally, even physically. Psychologists say this leads to relational hypervigilance, a state where the nervous system is stuck in prove you're not the problem mode. And when you live like this long enough, your identity becomes performance. You stop speaking from your heart and start speaking from fear. But here's the part that hits the hardest. People who overexplain rarely receive the same energy back. They pour effort into being understood by people who never tried to understand them. And so the overexplaining gets worse. Because the quieter someone listens, the louder their fear becomes. Now here's the twist. The gentle, painful truth. People who overexplain are often the ones with the softest hearts. They don't want to hurt anyone. They don't want to upset anyone. They don't want to take more than they give. They've spent their lives being careful. Careful with words. Careful with emotions. Careful with boundaries that were never respected in the first place. And yet, the world mistakes this softness for insecurity. But it's not insecurity. It's wounded kindness. It's someone who learned early on that love must be earned. That clarity keeps the peace. That silence leads to punishment. That being vague leads to conflict. That being misunderstood leads to distance. So they explain, and explain, and explain. Not because they want control, but because they're terrified of losing it. The truth is, overexplaining is not a flaw. It's a scar. A sign of someone who's been blamed unfairly. A sign of someone who's lived under criticism. A sign of someone who was taught that their feelings needed justification to be valid. But healing begins the moment you realize this. You don't owe the world a perfect explanation. You don't have to narrate your value. You don't need permission to take up space. The right people don't need paragraphs to understand you. The right people don't treat your honesty like an inconvenience. The right people don't punish you for being human. And maybe, just maybe, the reason you overexplain isn't because you're weak, but because you were never given the chance to feel safe. People who overexplain have hearts that were forced to grow up too quickly. They learned emotional responsibility before they learned emotional safety. And now they're trying to unlearn a lifetime of survival in a world that rarely sees the weight they carry. But there's something profoundly beautiful about them too. They care deeply. They love honestly. They communicate fully. They try, really try, to understand others. They give clarity because they never want anyone else to feel the confusion they felt growing up. They turn their pain into gentleness. That's the part no one talks about. The world benefits from their emotional intelligence, but never asks how they learned it. So if you are someone who overexplains everything, I want you to know this. You are not too much. You are not annoying. You are not dramatic. You are not difficult. You are someone who learned to survive by being understood. You are someone who carries the memory of being blamed. You are someone who still believes that clarity can save you. But you deserve relationships where you don't have to overexplain. You deserve people who don't make you feel like your words are landmines. You deserve to speak once and be heard. You deserve a life where misunderstanding doesn't feel like danger. And one day, you will find yourself in a moment where you say something simple, without overthinking, without justifying, without cushioning it, without apologizing, and the world won't collapse. No one will get angry. No one will leave. And in that moment, you will realize that safety doesn't come from overexplaining. It comes from being around people who don't require you to. Until then, be gentle with yourself. You are unlearning years of fear. You are relearning what it means to speak freely. And that journey, slow, quiet, imperfect, is still a form of courage. Because people who overexplain don't need shorter explanations. They need softer worlds. And maybe that's exactly what you're building now.